the beginning of democracy in 1994, Johannesburg has undergone many changes to transform into what it is today. Quashing a reputation of being dangerous and inaccessible, an inner-city regeneration program was initiated, rebuilding the area into an inclusive, secure place for work and play. Past Experiences is a privately owned tour operating company, assisting government in the effort to demonstrate the city as a safe, vibrant, accessible place for all to enjoy.
We started Past Experiences 6 years ago. It's a family business, and it came out of just a love for Joburg inner city. And at the time, there was very little going on. No one was doing anything similar, and it was just a way to show people the good, the bad, and the realistic of what is going on in Johannesburg. I think there is a big influx of people. I think when we first started, I remember going to a trade show and people saying to us, "But are you crazy? You know, Joburg inner city walking tours." And maybe we were a little crazy, but I always say this is not my job, this is my life, and everything I have is put into the Joburg inner city. I love it. And so there have been more people. We get a lot of locals that we're lucky. We get a lot of locals, corporates, schools, international tourists. So it's a nice mix of people, and all of them are so open-minded about coming into the city, which is so great.
It was really interesting. I didn't know that there was actually so much art in Joburg. The last time I was in this area was about 2 years ago, so to see the change it's been fantastic.
I love that there's this regeneration in Braamfontein, because we spent a lot of our younger years living in Braamfontein, and I love coming back and seeing it being such a vibey and dynamic place. It's wonderful.
It is superb, and it's become something that the people have created as opposed to the municipality in any way. It's really their own. They've taken ownership of it, which is fantastic.
I actually frequent this area a lot, and I didn't realize how the small things that I don't notice, which is quite fascinating. So next time I come back with a bit more of appreciation, which is great.
Braamfontein, when we started doing this tour, because it doesn't have the history of the rest of the city, in a way there wasn't as much to point out, and there were no coffee shops to take our groups to, so we used to go to the Devonshire Hotel, which is a lovely hotel. It's a 3-star hotel. It's been here for years and years, but that was where we could go. Now there's all these cool hip little places. We always still like to support the original people we did in the early days anyway, but yeah, huge changes. And I went to Wits here, Wits University, which is just behind where we are now, and the changes are just so immense, and I think generally for the better, and we'll have to see in like another 10 years.
The name Braamfontein dates back to as early as 1853, even before gold was discovered in 1886 and Johannesburg was founded. During the apartheid regime, there was a boom in large-scale commercial development. When the area began to deteriorate after democracy, intervention by both the city of Johannesburg and large corporate business initiated a process of urban renewal.
Braamfontein, just to go back to the early history, it's named after the original farm that was in the area. And now, it's difficult to imagine Braamfontein was a farm 130 years ago, but now it's this buzzing, vibey area that's really leading the regeneration of Johannesburg in many ways. And I find it a really exciting area, and an area that quite nicely sort of portrays what Johannesburg is and maybe what it could be. I think what's nice about this area is that it's many different developers and tenants working together, not one. And I think that adds a very nice sort of vibe to Braamfontein in general. There's some big tenants here. There's South Point, which is student housing. So there's many students here, which is fantastic. And then the other big tenant in the area is Play Braamfontein, who do the neighbour goods market. They do a lot of little boutique stores, nightclubs and bars. So quite different, but I think they both add something quite nice to the area.
According to Crime Stats South Africa, in the last 10 years, all crimes except household robberies have decreased in Gauteng. In the inner city, security measures such as better lighting, 24-hour traffic policing, and CCTV have improved safety in the area.
Slowly but surely, I think with the gentrification of Mapaneng and Braamfontein in these areas, I have friends who studied here and they've always told me that Braamfontein was safe. But I can't say, having not grown up in this area, that I would have felt safe walking around alone, even on a Saturday like this. But the more you start seeing people from different backgrounds, and also the different restaurants and markets that are popping up, coffee shops, it just makes it more of a safe and habitable area.
Yeah, I think it's definitely becoming more accessible. There's a lot of new stuff that's coming up and a lot of things that attract younger crowds and even maybe older people actually. Yeah, so definitely.
I know many people are still terrified of coming into Joburg. If you say you're going to Joburg, they are horrified, but they actually just need to come and see that, you know what, ordinary people live here. We're all the same actually.
And it's not just the older people who are scared of Joburg and coming in here. We're both teachers at a high school, and I really think the youngsters from the northern suburbs need to come in here to see what life in Africa is about. It's not that little cocoon that they're living in there in the wealthy suburbs. This is Africa, and it's so exciting and it's great, and they need to embrace that.
I think Johannesburg is a complex city. I think that there are dangerous areas, there's safer areas, but I also think that we've demonized Johannesburg to be this really bad place, and I don't think it is. I think the best way to get around that is to be realistic, but also to just think, well, there are really good people here. The majority of people are little families, kids, and they're just living their lives. And so yes, there's crime and you have to be careful, but there's also safer areas. There's times of the day when it's safer to visit those areas. And then maybe you just need to be a little bit educated about it and be realistic about it, and then it opens up the city for you. The alleyways are interesting because if you look at the setup of Joburg, there aren't alleyways in many places. So you've got Hillbrow and Braamfontein, and it's because they're a little bit newer than many other parts of the city. And the problem with alleyways is that they really are, often when a city degrades, it's where the focus is. So it's a lot of prostitution, drugs, crime centers towards alleyways. And so Braamfontein, what they did to regenerate the area many years ago was close up the alleyways. And what's so exciting is that they've removed all those fences now, and they've put public art into all the alleyways and public toilets, and they've added some interest, they've added trees. And so although it's still early days for a project like that, it's very exciting to go and walk through them and see what's on offer in just a little alleyway.
I thought it was quite insightful. I've never really looked at Braamfontein this way in terms of noticing the art and the graffiti and just the messages as well that are behind the art.
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely awesome. I actually work in Braamfontein and I've never seen it in this light, so it was great.
The inner city art is it's done by private companies, it's done by the government, and the government often have wider projects, and there was a fantastic project called the Gateways Project where they put big artworks into anywhere where you entered the city. And there's some really fun ones. My favorite one is down in Ferreirasdorp, which is of like origami pigeons, big metal sculptures of origami pigeons. And then the one that we saw was the eland, which is a big concrete eland as you enter Braamfontein. And it's sometimes size does matter, and it's this big, welcoming, quite it's quite daunting piece of art, but I like it a lot.
Between 2011 and 2016, 1 million people moved into the Gauteng province, searching for jobs, healthcare, education, and other life-supporting amenities. As Alan Payton wrote in his book, Cry the Beloved Country, all roads lead to Johannesburg, a city that continues to attract people from all over South Africa, the rest of Africa, and indeed the world.
Firstly, Johannesburg locals, and I'm one of them, I think we can be quite negative about everything. And maybe that's not the worst thing, but so firstly, we're quite negative. And so we don't promote our own city as citizens. Not everyone, but a lot of people. So that's one problem. But then it's also a lot of, although we do have people trying to market us, I find that when I do tours, especially for local people, they have no idea about alleyways and graffiti and street art and public art and what's going on. And it just shows you that there's very little being done. Well, there's very little reaching them about what's going on in Joburg. And so I wish that they could be reached and people would realize the good of what's happening here.
Locals and tourists are certainly looking forward to seeing the inner city continue to develop.
It's always easier said than done. Like if I was the government, what would I do? Because I'm not. But I would definitely put a lot into security. They have done a lot. Braamfontein's got very good security. They've got people on, street corners doing a lot of good. But I would put way more into it. And I think it's not about the safety of a tourist. It's about the safety of a local. And then from that, everyone else benefits.
The car train does come here, which makes it a very easy to get to. But I think maybe more sort of prominent inner city transport, so from the different areas, like from here to Mabaning, make it easier for people to get to the different areas that have been rejuvenated. That would be great.
I'd love to see these places growing and expanding and becoming more the norm in the city. I'd love to see Hillbrow becoming like this, central town, part around Ellis Park, all those areas. And I think businesses need to be investing more money in the city centre, not moving out, which is what they did 20 years ago, or whatever it was.
And I would like to see more dramatic art, more theatre. And it can be not your fuddy-duddy old theatre, but young, once again, theatre that comes from the community. That I would love to see.
More advertising about great places to go and events. The more events and attention we attract here, the better.
Better public transport. I think it would improve access to a lot of these areas. A lot of people can't access it because they're coming from far and they don't have their own cars. So I think safe public transport, and that runs late into the evenings, I think that would be awesome. As well as increased security, I think, in certain areas.
On next week's episode, tune in to hear from the city of Johannesburg about the current and future developments for the continued rejuvenation of Johannesburg's inner city.